Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The beloved community belongs to divine oneness, and so does all that it achieves. When I was a little girl, my grandfather would scoop me up in his arms and he would tell me stories of our ancestors. And my favorite story was our origin story, the story of Nanak. The story goes, 500 years ago, in the land of Punjab in India, there lived a man named Nanak. He was so moved by the beauty in the world that he chose to see the world through the eyes of wonder. But he was also distraught by what he saw. Endless turmoil, divisions and injustices and hierarchies, suffering that bled into his own heart. And so one day he chose to retreat from the world. He disappeared by the banks of a river, Sutlej, and on that river he sat in meditation. And the sun rose and the sun fell, and the sun rose and the sun fell, and the sun rose and the sun fell. And Nanak remained in contemplation, and the people did not know where Nanak had gone. The people thought Nanak was a dead man, a drowned man, until he emerged on the third day, birthed anew. He had a vision of unity on his lips. He had a revelation on that riverbank, and the revelation caused him to sing a song of oneness. Ik Omkar, he said, Ik Omkar, the oneness of humanity and the oneness of the world. We belong to one another. We can look upon the face of anyone or anything around us and say, you are a part of me I do not yet know. You are a part of me I do not yet know. Nanak began to sing this song of oneness across the countryside. I see no stranger, said Nanak. I see no enemy. Guru Nanak taught us that all of us could see the world in this way. Separateness is an illusion. When we quiet the chatter in our minds through music or meditation or recitation or song, the boundaries begin to disappear. The bowl breaks. For a moment we taste the truth, sweet as nectar. We are part of one another. Joy rushes in, and long after the moment passes, we can choose to remember the truth of our interconnectedness, that we belong to each other. We can choose to see no stranger. My sisters and brothers, my siblings, I share that story now because in the dark of night, when grief seizes my throat, it is the story of my ancestors who come back to me, that come back to me. It is the story my grandfather told me. It's the story of Nanak. And I'm beginning to hear something that I never heard before. That Nanak did not have his revelation in the temple or in the city or in the farmlands or with other people at all. No. Nanak had his revelation by a riverbank, away from other people. He was physically distant from all other people. And I began to think about all the stories of our saints and spiritual teachers and prophets. Think about it. They had their revelations on mountaintops or sitting under a tree alone or deep in their dreams, away from other people, physically distant from all other people. And I began to think about all of us now, all of us who have the privilege of sheltering in place, how millions of us are awakening to the truth that we may have denied before, that this virus has shown us the ways that we are interconnected, we are interdependent, that we are only as safe or as well as the most vulnerable among us, that no number of bans or border walls or hierarchies can deny the fact that we belong to one another, that we are part of one global human family. And that truth can cause some of us to retreat because that makes us vulnerable to each other. And those of us who want to sever our connection to one another take actions out of fear and self-interest. For too long has this world been ruled by those who want to sever our connection, build boundaries, hierarchies, inequalities, injustices, profit from those injustices, from keeping some people vulnerable, some people disposable. What if this was an opportunity like never before for those of us who embrace the truth of our interconnectedness to take action out of love and solidarity to remake the world to come? What if this is our time of transition? For this is what I know to be true, that when this pandemic ends, there is no going back to the world that was. No, there's only walking into the new future that awaits us. What will that future be? Will this suffering be followed by more suffering? If we take action out of fear and self-interest, then more suffering is to come. But what if? What if we make choices right now as individuals and as a society rooted in love and solidarity and that recognition that we belong to one another? Might we finally begin to birth the future that is longing to be, the world that is longing to be, the world that our great prophets and saints and indigenous leaders have long dreamt for us, a world where every single one of us belongs, where we are well, where we protect one another's humanity and dignity, where we see no stranger. This pandemic, as our sister Arundhati Roy in India has told us, this pandemic is a portal. It is a gateway from one world to the next. Might we start to imagine the world to come by taking action here and now, rooted in love, in revolutionary love. If you want to play the game of love with me, said Nanak, step forth with your head on your palm. You see, our spiritual teachers know what many of us are beginning to embrace, that love is not safe and easy. Love is dangerous. Love calls us to look into the fires of this world with a warrior's heart and a saint's eyes. The warrior fights, the sage loves. It is a path of revolutionary love. And it means that if I love you, and if I see you as my sister and my brother, then I must serve you in your time of need. I must fight for you when you are in harm's way. How many communities who are most vulnerable to this virus now have long suffered, their cries falling on deaf ears before this pandemic? Vulnerable communities, communities of color, the Black community, indigenous communities, transient communities, undocumented communities, poor communities. What if all of us resolve now to build a world where each and every one of us is seen and safe, where we fight for one another? It requires us to be brave, and it requires us to be bold. And so I leave you with this question. Yes, the future is dark, but what if? What if this darkness in our world right now is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if this is our greatest transition? The midwife says to breathe and to push, to breathe and to push, and to breathe again. I call you to breathe, my love, breathe, for this will be one long labor. But I promise you that you are not breathing alone. You are not pushing alone. If we breathe and push together, we can begin to birth the world that is longing to be born for our children and our children's children. Thank you so much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The beloved community belongs to divine oneness, and so does all that it achieves.